My name's Richard Straley. This is the Straley's Art Gallery in Livingston, which is directed by my wife Agnes. I'm surrounded by works of fellow painters who are included in our program. Mrs. Rockwood of the Livingston Library suggested a 4-part program which would deal with modern art, try to make modern art a little more comprehensible to the average person. We thought that we might do better trying to make the modern artist a little more comprehensible to the average person. So we've gone on a pilgrimage to several studios. We are including Herbert Bierman, Carmen Cicero, Maynard Sandel, and a visit to my own studio. This evening we'll be at the studio of Carmen Cicero in Soho, in Lower Manhattan. Mr. Cicero is a quite distinguished artist. He's in museum collections in this country and abroad, many prizes, many distinctions. And as we'll see as we get into the program, he's also quite an accomplished jazz musician. One of the things I thought we might discuss, Carmen, is the importance of other arts to what you're doing as a painter. And I know that you would be a good person to really talk about that, since you have been a professional jazz musician. You're a good jazz musician. I know you read.
Well, the relationship, that's just like asking, what's the relationship between music and art? That's a very tough thing to work out. As you know, I wanted to be a jazz musician.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did. But when it finally, when the two began to pull at me, apparently painting pulled harder and won. That does not mean that I have less respect for music. As a matter of fact, in some ways I feel that music is a superior art. I think it's a totally abstract art.
It's like a pure art.
Very pure art. And the sound comes through the air, it has no substance. It's a complete abstraction. It really could, raise goosebumps.
Yep.
In a way that I'm not even sure that I ever get from painting. The meaning of painting still eludes me. I have no idea. And well, I have an idea, but I have no clear idea of what it really is, what it means and what it's about. But how it relates to music, yeah, there's certain things about music that I find very interesting, having been a professional musician. And one of the things is simply this, that in the music world, the status of a musician is very clear. His technical capabilities are easily discernible by other musicians. And if he's a musician who relies on improvisation, like a jazz musician, these skills are easily understood by other jazz musicians. In other words, when a musician plays 10 bars, other musicians can understand his capabilities much more easily than a comparable situation with painters. In painting, your status, particularly during your own lifetime, is not discernible. No one knows who's better than anybody else. I don't know exactly why this is, and what people want to include as art or as painting can be anything. I mean, there's certain people want to put their own lifestyles into work and call this painting. People want to bug the squares, you know, in some form, some kind of protest Dada form, and call this painting. People want to startle people and call this painting. Some people just want to develop facility and skill and call this painting. When a painting is right to me, it creates a spell. It really creates a spell that leaves all intellectual and emotional
You can't define
activity
it.
out of
You
the
can't explain
situation.
it.
You're just in a spell. When I hear music that's beautiful, or when I'm playing, those rare moments when I think I play anything that's really worth listening to, I think that what is produced is a spell. It is in me. And I've talked to other musicians indirectly about this, and that's what they talk about. Being this state where that's unworldly, or you're instantly in the present in a very specific and a beautiful way.
You know, somewhat related to that, and George Muller said to me one time, I think a couple times, that what he misses in painting, or what he wishes could somehow be a part of painting, he knows it can't, is the kind of thing that musicians get into when they get together to make a work of art, you know, to play.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's loneliness, probably, is what I'm talking about.
You know, I think George Muller and a lot of other painters who think about this would be very surprised to see the difficulties that this brings, and would instantly run to refuge to the studio, probably including myself, or chiefly, I don't know. I love to play with other musicians, but to get a group of musicians through which you can produce this spiritual, whatever you want to call it, thing, through which you can make music or make art, those possibilities are slim. And rare.
In painting.
Well, in painting you're alone and you can do it, but in music, to get other souls together.
I see. You mean it's really rare even to achieve that in with
music,
good musicians.
And with good musicians. Personality conflicts, and there are all kinds of practical troubles with instruments, troubles with the daily course of your lives, trouble with all kinds of practical things. And then I guess the personalities of the musician, because you have to be tough and soft at the same time. Well, you do in painting, I think.
I think what George had in mind, though, was the loneliness aspect of painting.
Yeah, well, it is. Of course, it depends where you're located physically. If you're located in the country, it's lonely in peculiar ways, and beautiful in peculiar ways. And if you're in the city, it's lonely in peculiar ways.
Well, you've been out on the Cape, I know, many months of your life alone for periods of time.
That would not,
working.
Yeah, that would not suit my temperament, because it would become alone to the point where the aloneness would draw me in and away from other aspects of reality that are necessary for me to stimulate me. When I'm in the city, I have to face things that I don't like to face, but somehow these things stir up my energy and make it possible for me to express. And then in another sense, if I happen to be, I could become a very lazy guy very easily. Just offered the opportunity to be lazy. And so the city is a kind of discipline to me. It keeps me jumping. It's fascinating, particularly around here. It has some ugly aspects to it. I mean, just the general aspects of ugliness that one finds in any major American city. But then in New York, in Soho, as I say, my chief feeling about it, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really love it. The vitality and the life here is marvelous.
Why don't we discuss the scene in New York? I mean, it's the art capital of the world, and if anything's happening, it's going to be happening here.
Well, I can only tell you...
And you live here,
right.
And work here.
I'm in the heat of it, but I can only tell you about it from my perspective, naturally. I'm sure I don't see it all. There are a lot of aspects of it I don't see. And I'm positive that there are people living in the realities here in Soho that are, I don't even touch. I mean, there are high levels and low levels and social levels and this and that.
Well, but you see the work that's being
well,
done.
the work,
or do you? Maybe you don't see the work.
The majority of the work here is terrible. It's just awful. Anybody, if you were to ask, if you were to take a poll of all the artists in Soho and ask them that question, they would all say the majority of the work here is terrible. And that would include, of course, a lot of the terrible artists saying this, myself included possibly, who knows. But it is pretty bad. But what we have is just a situation where we have more artists, so the percentage of lousy work is greater.
Well, you know, Picasso, if he saw somebody's work someplace and there was something good in it that he hadn't used in his work, you know that night he'd be painting that thing into his painting. And George Muller said to me that, you know, like, if he sees something good, he's going to take it, you know, if he can use it. I mean, that's the way everybody goes. But he said, like, he's been coming over to New York for years, and he can't steal nothing.
Well,
you know, there just isn't honestly, anything happening that's exciting. And
no, that I don't agree with that. When I say the majority of the work is terrible, I don't mean that there's nothing going on, because there is stuff going on.
But is it being shown?
The proliferation of works of art is... And one does see failures and successes, and one good painting and show, and one bad painting, and so forth and so on. And it does generate a curious kind of interest, and there are good shows that do emerge. People like, I just recently saw the Frank Stella show, and it was a remarkably interesting show. And I see numerous shows down here at the Leo Castelli Gallery and so forth, and Nancy Hoffman, and they have very interesting people. You know, people whom you say, well, I don't know if this man is going to be, you know, the great genius of this century, but it's interesting, it's compelling, it opens up your mentality. I think it, you break out of old forms, you know, when you see a lot of junk, you get very tired, you get intensely tired of certain kinds of cliches. And so that spurs you to move on. Now that may be a negative value, but it's a value. But there are other values. I mean, that simply you're just turned on. You're turned on by a lot of talk. A lot of the talk is meaningless, but a lot of it, you know.
Would you like to talk about your work, Carmen?
You know
what I want to ask you, and I don't know if you even want to get into it, but like well, I should say that you have done some very tender, lyrical kind of things, and they're around on a wall. Some of these little things, and these big canvases here. But the expressionist work has an extraordinary amount of violence in it.
That is a very, very complicated thing for me to talk about.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. It's very complicated. In the first place, I'm not in any way ashamed of the violence in them, and I'm not defensive about it. I'm not even interested in people who take that tack with me. If they don't like it, tough. But just as for my own private concern and wondering about what it's all about, there are a lot of aspects involved in it. I've had some brushes with violence in the last couple of years, although I'm not a violent person. Probably my record of violence compared to the average male would be non-existent practically.
When's the last time you hit anybody?
I don't hit people, you know. I'm positive that I could be driven to it, and I'm positive that I could be aroused. I have the potential of violence. I think a lot of us do, but I found it very interesting to examine it, to really look at the character of it in a very direct way. I found it very, very involving, and to think about it. In one sense, it's an indulgence. I see it as an indulgence. In another sense, it's a conditioning. In other words, we're conditioned to be violent either by the society or by our own personal backgrounds, you know, depending upon what influences were placed upon us and what lifestyle.
When you say an indulgence, you mean like we permit it?
It's almost like saying this. It's almost like saying this. Each person individually, we know that we can put a restraint. We can put restraints on ourselves at a certain point, but the delicious luxury of being totally irresponsible is a temptation. And I think it's always, can be a very unhealthy thing. I don't know how to characterize it in terms of human personal health. I just don't know how it fits in there. I don't know. In a certain sense, I think violence restrained is still violence. So what does one say? You go out and punch somebody in the nose and feel better? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I know I have it, and I know almost everybody that I know has it. We on the... Oh, okay. I'm here lost in my in what I'm doing here. You want to take a glass of water? Maybe get me one, too.
Okay.
I'm enjoying waxing poetic here. And I think that that's in all of this, and it's very interesting. And I kind of enjoy painting about it, but I don't get any, once I finish the paintings, I don't have any attachment to them in a violent sense. I see them in a very detached way, like Goya. I see them mainly, you know, sort of like Goya, but a contemporary Goya. I'm not classifying myself with Goya. I'm just saying that that's...
Well, there have been a lot of painters who got, I don't know if they're getting it out of themselves, you know, in one aspect into the painting. And Cezanne did a lot of very violent things.
I don't know. I don't think I know anyone who hasn't had a brush with violence just as intense as those instances represented in these paintings. There are people shooting one another. Well, I never shot anyone, but sometimes I wish to. Who hasn't?
Sure.
Who the hell hasn't wished to shoot somebody? And I've felt like beating people up brutally at times. And I haven't done that since I was a teenager or something like that. This was the first one I painted of this whole series. I was painting hard-edge paintings. These are the only two remaining. I didn't take them down because they're so damn big that they're too hard to take down, so I just left them up there. Besides that, I kind of enjoy them. Now, this picture was one of those pictures. And some very uncomfortable things happened to me in my life.
Right.
Very disturbing. And they produced an anxiety, and from that anxiety, or frustration, I just cut into one of these pictures. It was very unexpected. And I really wasn't doing it. It was, I suppose, a truly honest expression. It wasn't for anybody, for anything, or it was just a need.
Do the figures surprise you?
Very much, yeah. They did. They really did.
The intensity of the...
It was intense, and I was driven on by the violence of it. It was, again, an indulgence that you can get away with on canvas, but not in life. I think Well, people like myself, you, I guess most people can't indulge that without paying a very heavy price. And so this was the first, and in this instance, I painted over one of those. And the one further back, I had a,
Is this part of the original?
yeah, that's part of that.
This business and
Mhm.
was this part of it?
No, not put that in. I may still change it. I keep changing them. I think I'm, basically, I'm not gentle and sweet, but I have some of that in me. I think if,
Well,
I think a
you have the
natural,
ability to, whatever you do have in you, you have the ability to transform it into energy. And I think that's what gets into the...
well, this is something very interesting. When I begin to generate energy, I feel it very strongly, and I sometimes become filled with anxiety because of it. I know that this is potentially destructive energy, and fortunately, I have an outlet for it. I heard Rollo May talking about it once on a talk program, and he talked about the thing he called demonic energy, which is potentially destructive energy, according to his definition. And this potentially destructive energy, he believes, is a necessary component of the emotional structure for an artist. And I don't know if he's right or wrong. I kind of feel it in myself. A lot of the artists that I know have this, it seems to me. I see jazz musicians that way. Like, for example, Charlie Parker or John Coltrane. This was potential violence put under great restraint. Mm-hmm. One says, oh, Charlie Parker's so lyrical and flowing. Yeah, sure, within very strict and tight bounds. And he does have, he reveals a lot of whimsy and humor and so forth in his playing. But this is a fantastic, intense try put in under good restraint. That ought to do it, huh?
In New Jersey, Carmen Cicero is represented by the Straley Gallery of Livingston. Music was provided by Carmen Cicero and Vinnie Burke. Join us again next week at this same time as Livingston Library presents the next in this series on the modern artist.